let's imagine that your perception of playing a role-playing game is this space. It's limitless. It goes in all directions. It enables you to do everything that you want to do. This is the way that you most enjoy playing a role-playing game. And out there, somewhere, there are people who play role-playing games differently than you, and that's okay. It's all okay as long as we're having fun. But when we meet each other and try to talk, we run into trouble. We lack language or sensitivity or actual appreciation, or bias gets in the way, or we have an actual blindness that prevents us from seeing something that the other person sees. And that's where this white space came from as a metaphor for how you like to play. So your white space and my white space might not be the same, or they might be exactly the same, or they might differ in some subtle ways, but this is a metaphor for our individual perfect way to play. So let's mess it up. Let's introduce something else and then try and figure out what it is. So, boom! A gray box. This gray box, let's say that this gray box is how someone else likes to play. And we're going to go back in time for some terminology, and you should be able to find this terminology online if you're not familiar with it. We're going to say that this person inside the gray box likes to play from the point of view of the actor stance. And we don't mean actor in terms of performer on a stage or in front of people. We mean actor in terms of someone who acts, someone who does something. Right? Now you notice that the gray box is inside the white space, and that's important. So inside this gray box is everything that encapsulates the actor stance. And the person who likes to play a role-playing game in the actor stance will be 100% satisfied when they're in that box. When circumstances require that they step out of the box, such as the doorbell rings and the pizza comes, or when someone can't remember the name of the NPC that they just talked to and can't figure a way to ask a question in character and instead says, yo, Brian, that guy, you know, the dude that the GM used the funny voice for, what was his name again, right? When those situations happen, we get pushed out of the box into the area outside the box, and we're no longer in the place where we feel happy, and we regret that this has happened. There are situations which push us outside of this box that we have gotten used to, such as someone saying, roll, or you having to state the total of a roll, or the outcome of a roll. But you've built up a habit of this, and so you can break out of the box, completely shattering that actor stance protected space and go into the space outside, but then rebuild it fairly effortlessly. See, inside the box we could think of as a place of containment. We can think of it as a place where that stance is thoroughly protected, and every time you leave it, it's gone. You've broken through the walls. You can enter the box, but in a sense, you can't leave the box. So there's this desire to safely be inside the box. Now here's what's cool about the box is that inside that box you can move in any direction. It is unlimited space and potential for imagination within the context of what the box is, i.e. the actor stance. Well, what's outside the box? What is the white space in this particular example? Well, to stick with this terminology, outside this gray box, the white space is actually not white. It's blue. And this blue box represents the author stance. We'll stick with coherent terminology that everyone can look up and see, an independent source for. So the actor stance is contained completely inside the author stance. And the person who wants to play in an author stance can move about freely, unlimited direction, unlimited distance inside everything that is contained in the author stance. And if you'll remember, inside that stance is the actor stance. Look, there it is. Now, really, if you'll remember back to the opening, this isn't a blue box and a gray box that we're looking at. This is white space. There are no boundaries, there are no limits. It's just infinite whiteness. But for the purpose of our discussion, the gray box of infinite whiteness is inside the blue box of infinite whiteness. And why is that? Because the actor stance needs to gain access to some of the things, many of the things, that the actor stance uses. In order to be an author, we need to be able to get inside the head of the character. We need to be able to supply dialogue for the character. We need to know what motivates the character and how the character would feel and how the character interacts with other people from their perspective, so that what it is that we're trying to author has coherence and sense. See, for the actor, we only need to occupy the gray box because we're not trying to author anything. We're only trying to experience it. But from the point of view of the author, we need to know what the character is experiencing so we can author it. So, in other words, the actor cannot see the blue box because they're completely contained in the gray box. And the gray box to them is infinite whiteness. And the author cannot see the gray box because it's just a part of their blue box. But, of course, when they look at the blue box, they just see infinite whiteness. Now, what is the infinite whiteness that we see around the blue box? Well, in this set of terms, that would be the director stance. The director needs to understand the author's perspective and gain access to the in-character perspective. But as we mentioned before, the white space is simply our perception of how we like to play. And it's the effort to bring analysis to bear, the effort to understand where it is that we are standing, among all the other gamers out there and the way that they play, and our ability to see how we are standing in some of the same ground, but how we are not standing at all times on all the same ground, that pushes us in the direction of needing to understand that we need to talk with each other. We need to choose games that enable us all to find what we're looking for, and we need to do that with charity for our fellow gamers, lest we end up playing by ourselves. Unfortunately, people being people, and that meaning complicated and occupying unpredictable and moving points along whatever spectrum it is that we occupy, that even an attempt like this to graphically represent part of the role-playing experience will fail. Because while I might be very content to play within the bounds of the gray box as a player, and might be perfectly content to play within the bounds of the director's stance as a game master, I have met, as I'm sure you have, people who would prefer to play, or to have everybody play, in the author stance, including the game master, or to have everyone play in the director's stance, including the people that would traditionally play characters. And we influence each other. Every group creates its own dynamic. Every group has its own interactions. And so people who generally enjoy playing in an author stance when playing with me as the game master may find themselves spending most of their time in that part of the author stance, which is the actor stance, the part mainly concerned with character. And at the same time, I am finding myself drawn into conceiving of the in-character play as being in character as author, rather than in character as character. Our interaction is distorting, although that sounds like a negative word, is changing the shape of or changing the boundaries of our zone of enjoyment because we have chosen to play together and we choose to continue to play together because the games that we produced together were fun. And if they weren't fun, and if we couldn't figure out a way to make them fun, those relationships in the gaming sense, and we find other people to play the games with. So, from a sense of promoting human harmony, it would be nice if there were just one way to play, one DAO of play. And in a sense there is in the moment with your group, with this game at this time, at this stage of your lives, there likely is one truly great way to play. And you can find it if you as the group find the route to achieve it. That brings us back full circle to where this series began. Seeking a DAO of play. And we may find as we age and grow in the hobby that means remembering to stop for a moment and peel back the layers of all that advice, all that veiled suggestion buried in game books about what it is that works for us and can be introduced to others and they can find will work for them or must be rejected because in this place, at this time, with this group, for this game, what worked before doesn't work now. That comes through communication. Communication with ourselves, being honest with what we are putting into the game and what we're hoping to get out of it, but also communication with others. That will in turn lead us to making wise selections, selections which go beyond just what we ourselves are looking for, but what will give everybody what they need. Sometimes we choose games simply because they are new, or the cover is cool, or so-and-so said it was great. That might work out for us. It might work out for us fairly often, and then there's times when it is disastrous, not because the game was bad, or the recommendation was bad, or what the coolness of the cover didn't match the condition of the interior, but rather because we, as a group, were not prepared to get from it what we needed, or give it what it needed to be great. Just as it seems like there's no one way to rule them all in terms of play, there's no one game to rule them all for all the groups, for all the permutations of groups that are out there. And if we can come to each new experience seeking to contribute, then our chances of success with multiple games, with multiple styles, with multiple people should improve. And that doesn't mean that we should be out there seeking new games all the time. While that works very well for me and my friends, it may not be what will work for you and yours. But over time, we do need to be aware that little by little, bit by bit, the foundations and formations of our groups change. Life has a way of getting in the way of fun. But the process, although it is endlessly repeating and reinventing itself, the process, because what we're doing is seeking a DAO of play, the process itself is pleasure. After all, we play to have fun.